On. And we are live. Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Learning with Miss Nancy. And I have a wonderful, wonderful show for you. Today, we're going to talk about the school counselor and the early learner. And I have the absolute best school counselor there is, who has taken from his day to speak with us. And his name is Eric Brown. Hi, Eric, and welcome to the
Hi,
show.
Miss Nancy. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. And folks, I know him personally. I've known him since he was a young man, like with my kids. And I must say, before I get started, kudos to his mom, Joan Bacon. I hope you're watching. I said to her that she needs to write a book on how to train up a child in the way they should go, because all of her children, all of them, are college graduates and making good money in their professional careers. So kudos to your mom. So,
Thank
Eric,
you.
welcome to our show. And for those who are here for the first time, don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button. Because my purpose on Tuesday is to bring forth information to change the stereotype. I want people are calling me now. See how it is? People are calling me now. You know, many people believe that Black men aren't doing their jobs. And if you look at Facebook and if you look at Twitter and if you look at all of the social media and those horrible pictures and scenarios that you see, you might believe it. But my job is to bring to you the truth. And the truth is, Black men are working hard every day for their families and in their communities, making a difference. And here's one Black man that's doing just that, Eric Brown, counselor. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
Eric,
you.
before we get into the show, I want to read your bio first. And thank you for sending it to me. And you know, Eric, I had it already and queued. And you know, Miss Nancy's not real tech savvy. Oh, Lord have mercy. But I'm going to get to it. You sent an email, right?
Yes.
To my email. Okay, let me get to my email. Folks, just bear with me for 1 second, because as soon as I start yakking, I forget where I am. Okay. Eric, live. Here we are. All right, folks, now listen to this. Eric Brown is a certified professional school counselor and licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania. A Philadelphia native, Eric attended George Washington Carver High School of Engineering and Science before matriculating to Swarthmore College, where he studied education and psychology. Following his time at Swarthmore, Eric worked in community mental health, providing school based and family therapy to vulnerable populations. Recognizing the critical need for culturally competent providers in both clinical and academic environments, Eric pursued his graduate studies at the University of Pennsylvania, earning a Master of Science in Education. Counselor Brown is currently employed by the School District of Philadelphia, supporting the academic, social, emotional, career, and cognitive development of students. In his free time, Counselor Brown enjoys traveling and spending time in Wissahickon Valley Park. Now, that's a handful. So we have a person who is not only a wonderful, handsome young Black man, he's educated, certified. And that's we always look for people sometimes, you know, when they get in these positions, Eric, with credentials, because a lot of people will say, yeah, I do this and I do that. But it's always good to have those credentials behind your name. So let's just start the interview, because, Eric, there are a lot of parents who watch my show who have children who are in preschool or nursery school or at home. And they're getting ready to enter a big school. They call elementary school the big school, right? So for a parent who's entering elementary school for the first time with their early learner, what should they expect for a counselor? If they say, okay, we didn't have counselors in preschool, what is your role as a counselor?
Well, I guess every counselor is different. And I
Mhm.
think, especially for some of us older folks who
Mhm.
have gone through the educational system, we might reflect on our experiences of our school counselor. And in some of those reflections, the counselor was absent
Mhm.
or non existent.
Mhm.
But what my vision of a school counselor is somebody who is there every day,
Mhm.
kindergarten through 12th grade,
Okay.
getting to know the students,
Mhm.
providing the academic support, the study skills,
Mhm.
the career advisement of
Mhm.
career exploration,
Okay.
and in the later years, helping you figure out what steps education you need to take to obtain that career, but
Mhm.
also that social emotional learning, that piece that honestly in Philadelphia really seems to be missing.
Okay.
That conflict resolution skills,
Mhm.
the social engagement, how to
Mhm.
make friends, how to keep friends. And so that's a little bit of like the day to day of what a
Right.
school counselor does.
Mhm.
And like you were saying, it starts as early as pre-K.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is with an express need.
Mhm.
So for those pre-K parents out there, if you are recognizing things in your child that or may have be of concern,
Mhm.
that the school counselor is somebody who you can strategize with,
Mhm.
somebody who can provide resources, and also that education, because everybody doesn't have the fortune of being able to go to these Ivy League institutions and
Right.
learn about child development.
Right.
So
Right.
the school counselor is somebody locally who can really speak to what is developmentally appropriate, what
Mhm.
are some things we can do in-house to support a child's needs, but also help the child and the family connect with community service providers so
Mhm.
they can really get the support they need to have the best functioning child and the greatest student.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I think also, like to me, the school counselor is a leader, a school leader, because
Absolutely.
I think everybody depends on you, the school, the students, right? The teachers.
Yes.
I was an admin assistant principal. I depended a lot. My office was right next door to the counselor. And so you have like in your resume, uh, academically you're trained, and also you're trained for that social emotional component, which many of us don't have the training in. So you can also provide support and guidance in those areas. So that's really good. So Eric, okay, so as a school counselor, how does that work for a new parent? Do they have to make an appointment? Like they have an issue with a child that has, let's say a kid is just not adjusting well in kindergarten, and they cry a lot, many of them. Do they just walk into your office? What's the procedure? Do they have to make an appointment? Do they stop you in the schoolyard when you're do they stop you at lunchtime? Like, what is the process?
the the real answer is all of the above. The
Okay.
preferred answer would be to reach out to schedule something.
Mhm.
But the approach I take is that I want to really meet folks where they are. And
Okay.
sometimes where they are is right in the schoolyard,
Mhm.
or sometimes where they are is in the office, angry and
Okay.
wanting to protect their child early on a Monday morning
Uh-huh.
before I've had my coffee or if I've
Right.
even had breakfast.
Right.
So, I really want to meet folks where they are, but ideally, parents can reach out. Most school counselors have their email addresses on
Okay.
their school's website. So
Yes.
that is always an option of like making sure that you're introducing yourself.
Mhm.
If your child has some needs, introducing yourself to the school counselor at the
Mhm.
beginning of the school year,
Mhm.
building that rapport, building that relationship. Um, Something I try to take very seriously is
Mhm.
having that rapport with all of my students,
Mhm.
regardless of grade or ability.
Okay.
But if you know that you have specific concerns, make sure that you're talking to the school counselor early and developing a team around your child to support them.
Okay. Good. Thank you so much. All right. So here's a question for you. Counselors are fully integrated in the natural flow of the school day, right? So, how do you now? You're in the natural flow of the school day. So, what might that look like for you? The natural flow, like, because I'm gonna tell you, I have seen situations in my experience where there are counselors who are up and running from the time the school bell rings to the end of the day, and then there are some who are so bombarded they can't leave their office because every teacher in the building has thrown every child who has an acting out behavior in their office, and they're lined up in the hallway. So it's like you're pulled from so many different directions. Like, so how does the flow of the day go for you? Like, what does that look
So I really try to break up the day
like?
into like a morning and an afternoon.
Okay.
The best way I really have handled this is in the mornings, trying to be visible. greeting students at the entrances as they come in,
Oh, that's good.
right? Reading
Mhm.
faces, reading body language, kind of being
Mm.
able to pull students to the side if they're coming in with a certain disposition.
Okay.
And so that's how I like to start the day, especially
Mm.
for some students who I know have particular challenges, and specifically home challenges.
Okay.
See how they come in,
Mhm.
because if we can improve their attitude
Yes.
early,
Yes.
we can, disrupt a lot of the frustration and the
Mhm.
heartache of the afternoon if we can soften them up in the
Mhm.
morning. So if
Oh,
I'm
that's
able to do
good.
that, I do
Mhm.
that.
Okay.
And then I do some check-ins.
Okay.
Families may or may not be aware of students who have individualized education plans or IEPs or 504 plans, which are
Mhm.
for accommodations.
Mhm.
So students who have these services who are on my caseload, I
Mhm.
will walk around to the homerooms and
Mhm.
then just do a visual check-in with them. Some of them I do a more formalized check-in, check-out. So in the morning, I'm checking in with them, doing goal setting for the day. And then at the end of the day, we will do a checkout and see how well they did with achieving those goals.
Mm.
Throughout the day,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
pretty multifaceted. I do small groups with students. So these are students with specific needs, whether it be somebody who's lost somebody in the
Mhm.
past few months, or somebody who's dealing with family change or divorce,
Oh,
study skills, social anxiety, depression. Depending on what those small groups are, that's what I work on.
wow. You got a lot
There are
going
some
on.
students who need like that one-on-one.
Right.
Even though the school counseling program is not really meant for one-on-one individual therapy,
Okay.
you know, if there is a need for it, I try
Mhm.
to meet my students and meet those needs.
Oh, you seem like Superman. I know they must love you there. I'm telling you, you are
Oh, listen,
wonderful.
I, I was once a very young man when I started, but the grades are coming in. I tell you, it's
It's
some
aging you, right? Okay, so you've answered really the question was how does a school counselor impact the lives of the early learners? And you've already talked about the social and emotional support, the social skill development, academic guidance. And it's funny, as I mentioned in one of my interviews, how some people honestly don't read data. And how important data doesn't always have to be test scores, right, Eric? It could be attendance, behavior. Can you talk a little bit about how that's important? And when you look at like a what do they call it? Like a view of the child. You have like a picture in the front, and on the back you have all of this information about this. A
yes.
composite view of the kid. How does that really help in figure out what road to take, what program to take, what's the best interventions to make? You have to have the data, correct?
You have to have the data.
Okay.
And the data can come from many different sources. Some of the data can be anecdotal data from
Yeah.
teachers and from parents,
Hmm.
but you're absolutely right. There's that attendance data, the academic data, but
Hmm.
also as a school counselor, we do assessments in our small groups.
Okay.
So, other than just being a kind person
Yeah.
standing at the door every day, how do we know like the school counselor is effective? And
Right.
so we have to like collect some data before we do small groups and then after. And so I like to do a pre-assessment, and this is
Hmm.
something that the American School Counseling Association, ASCA, really says is a best practice, is that
Okay.
when we're doing these skill groups, whether it's making friends or managing anxiety or
Hmm.
frustration tolerance,
Hmm.
we have to like ask some questions about students' understanding of those topics first. And
Okay.
usually, like kids don't know anything about
Right.
coping skills. You
Right.
ask them what a coping skill is, and they're like, "It's a skill when you cope."
Right.
But by the end of like a 6 to 8 week session, they
Mhm.
understand what coping skills are. They
Right.
can identify 3 or 4 that they regularly use, and
Hmm.
they become better versed in the language. So
Right.
like even that level of data is really meaningful.
Okay.
In addition to attendance, which is something in my wheelhouse, I'm also like an attendance designee and
Okay.
trying to problem solve what are some of the barriers that cause children to miss school.
Right.
family related things or transportation related. We
Mhm.
try to problem solve with families so that we can overcome those barriers and get the kids here.
That's good. You have answered it. You've done behavior interventions, crisis intervention. I know that's a big one, right? Crisis intervention. Eric, now I'm gonna tell you, I think about all of the days that I had to wait in the building till 10 o'clock at night.
Mm,
If there was a crisis and waiting for, DHS to come or the police to come, people don't understand your job that you do and
yeah.
the administrator. You are there late nights until somebody comes to get this child who's in distress, right?
Yes.
And that's a big piece that people don't seem to understand. Can you explain this crisis intervention piece? That's part of your job,
Yes.
right?
So
Mhm.
So a crisis is when a student is in such mental distress that they are having thoughts of harming themselves or somebody else,
Mhm.
or students who are expressing that there's something going on at home that is a
Mhm.
danger to them and they're afraid to return.
Right.
And that is really where the school counselor is crucial,
Right.
one in navigating all of the systems that play a role in that, whether it is DHS or the police or other family members who might come in to
Mhm.
kind of meet the needs of the child in that situation.
Mhm.
But we, and particularly in Philadelphia, are dealing with some very volatile situations,
Right.
students with extreme needs. And
Mhm.
so I wish,
Mhm.
that I
Right.
could say, oh, yes, as an educator, my school day ends at 3 o'clock and you go home and you don't think about it.
Right.
That is not the
Right.
reality
Right.
of any teacher, let alone a
Right.
school counselor, because
Right.
it
Right.
is 24/7.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
sometimes it does demand that you're staying here until DHS
Yes.
has the opportunity to pick them
Come.
up
Right.
and have actually sat here until 6:30, 7 o'clock at
7 o'clock. Yes.
waiting for and supporting the kid because DHS is coming, but DHS is another system of strangers who is taking this child away from everything that they know and are
Mhm.
comfortable with. And
Mhm.
so usually in those crisis situations, the
Mhm.
school counselor and the school administrator are the last people that a student may see that they're comfortable with
Right.
until they come back to school.
Right.
And so kind of being with them, and oftentimes
Mhm.
there are long unstructured periods. So you're really just getting to know the child even more and
Right.
probably having to order some dinner for them
And
from Uber Eats,
right.
and feeding them.
Right.
But really just being that support in the last line of defense.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think like I said, we're looking at social media and they only get a snapshot of what goes on, and the next thing you know, people are up in arms and teachers shouldn't get paid so much money, they're not doing, they have no clue that, like you said, teachers really have unspecified hours, and especially a counselor, especially administrator, because you are monitoring the whole day. You're there throughout the entire day and you're dealing with so many issues all day long, and somebody needs to follow you around, and then they'd get a better idea and maybe send you more flowers and say thank you, as opposed to always having so many negative things. But I thank you, and I'm sure that my viewers thank you for the hard work that you do, and thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
the next question is, what are some questions, this is a good one, that parents should be prepared to ask a school counselor when they meet with you, if they're having issues at the school or with their child? They should have some questions already laid out. What would be the priority question?
So things that I want families to start thinking about is like, what I believe is that you are the expert on your family and on your child.
Okay.
There's nothing that I can tell you as a school counselor. I
Mhm.
do have some data in front of me,
Mhm.
some testing and some academic data,
Right.
but the school counseling strongly academic, but it really is about the development of the individual and personal development and
Mhm.
personal growth. Whether it is career development or that social emotional piece, it is
Mhm.
really about like the formation of a full person. So I want to know, like, what interests your child? What are their strengths?
Mhm.
What are their challenges? What
Mhm.
what do you see them as needing help with?
Okay.
Um, so those are the questions that I want parents to ask, or
Mhm.
just have answers to. What
Okay.
what strengths does your child have?
Mhm.
What do we bring to the table as a family to support this child?
Okay.
Because oftentimes, and I think as educators, especially at this time of the year, we're
Mhm.
all exhausted, and
Yes.
parents can come and like, what can you do? What can
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
do for my child? And I think a more holistic approach is
Mhm.
appropriate. Like, what can we do to
Mhm.
support your child? What
Mhm.
what does it look like on my side? On my side, I can offer small groups and
Yes.
limited counseling.
Yes.
But if your child has true emotional needs,
Mhm.
they need to be connected with therapy. And I know as Black folks,
Right.
there's hesitancy
Yes.
about counseling.
Mhm.
But one thing I can certainly attest to, whether it was my time at Penn or just in my career thus far, is that there are Black and brown therapists and clinicians who are spiritual or accepting.
Mhm.
They are Christian, they are Muslim. There is a therapist and a
Mhm.
counselor and support for you no matter your walk of life.
Wow.
And that all you have to do is go out there and seek it. If it
Okay.
doesn't work the first time, do not
Mhm.
give up. Right?
Okay.
That,
Mhm.
that wasn't the case in any relationship you ever had, right? When this
Right.
relationship
Right.
didn't work out, you didn't stop dating.
Right.
And that is what those therapeutic relationships are about. They have to work for you.
Right.
Your therapist is never going to get mad at you because you
Mhm.
needed to have a change for yourself. It
Right.
is, we are professional folks. So definitely be ready to put in work because
Mhm.
counseling and therapy are, are hard work, and you're
Yes.
going to be making demands of yourself and of the child.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's something that we want to do. Like, let's make sure that we're prepared for that.
Okay. And that's a good response. Thank you so much. So if a parent says to you, well, and I know they come to you, well, and I hear it all the time. Well, my child is just not happy here. Oh, my child doesn't have any friends. Nobody likes them. Like I know you hear that. What kind of advice would you give? You know you're going to hear it in
Oh,
September.
and here's the line. This is the line that gets me all the time. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this one, but my child is being bullied and no one's doing
Yep.
anything to stop it.
Okay. Right.
And as somebody who cares, I have
Yes.
I have 450 students. As
Right.
somebody who cares about every single one of them,
Right.
that hurts. That is a
Yes.
slap in the face
Right.
because if I'm aware of situations where bullying has
Right.
happened, and I think bullying is such a charged word
Yes.
these days.
Yes.
And bullying also has like a very specific definition of
Hmm.
power imbalance and
Hmm.
targeted and
Hmm.
repeated. That if somebody calls your mom fat,
Right.
that isn't necessarily bullying. It
Right.
is mean. It
Right.
hurts, right?
Right.
You don't want to subtract from the pain it causes a student to hear anything mean.
Right. Right.
But that is not bullying.
Right.
But when these things do come up, I have a certain approach that I take.
Okay.
We can never stop somebody from being mean. We
Hmm.
joke with parents who are coming in with that. Like, if I had that ability,
Hmm.
I would, even though I do love this job, I leave this job behind and go make billions of dollars
Billions of dollars.
for
That's
people
right.
to do whatever I wanted them to do. Right?
Right. Right.
That's the reality. I think the most important thing is the experience of
Hmm.
child and of of all the players.
Hmm.
And so if a child is being harmed verbally or getting bullied or
Hmm.
harassed in some way, I think
Hmm.
it's more meaningful, especially at these elementary years,
Hmm.
for them to develop a voice,
Hmm.
say it,
Right.
and have their voice heard. Now,
Hmm.
it might not change the attitude of another 10-year-old,
Hmm.
but them having an experience of the adults in my life,
Hmm.
my mom, they went to the school, and then the adults in my life supported me in handling a situation.
Hmm.
That's something that is meaningful at the age of 30.
Right.
Now, the adults in your life handling the problem for you and you not being aware of it, that doesn't do much. That might
Right.
solve the issue in the here and now,
Right.
but there are going to be bullies at 19,
Yes.
29, 59 even.
Right.
And
Right.
so we have to teach these young people those skills to navigate those situations early on and
Hmm.
consistently,
Hmm.
because mom and dad can come up here every single day,
Right.
unless they can't fight the battles for
Yes.
you. And even if
Yes.
they did, like some folks who want to do in Philadelphia, it's
Right.
not a appropriate. So
Right.
how do they handle it in a way that's going to make them feel better, make them feel heard and supported?
Right. Yeah. That's important. That is so important. And Eric, this is another issue that I've encountered, and I'm sure that you see evidence of this all the time. I look at some of the parents, and I think that they don't understand that children are always watching them. They're
Mm,
always watching them, and whatever behaviors you model, those children will also bring it to school, and they're actually replicating, or they're duplicating the same behavior that they see at home. So some of these things that the kids bring into the building, it's not that they created it.
yeah,
An adult exposed them to it, and the way in which they handle conflict is how these children handle conflict. So when mom comes up, in many cases, hollering, screaming, cussing, and fussing, children are looking, and that's not the way we handle conflict. So I guess for you, my question is, how do you actually deal with the parents? Because many cases, I think the issue is not the child, it's the parent. Because when you get the kids by themselves, they're okay.
yes.
Then they go home with a mother or a father who's irate about every little thing. So do you do workshops for parents? How do you know, mediate with the parents?
I, I would have to agree with you that like
Mhm.
parental issues
Yes.
are some of like the greatest challenges.
Mhm.
A lot of our parents, especially in elementary school,
Mhm.
they're, they are younger folks.
Yes.
Some of them may have had children before they were ready and
Mhm.
have a lot of questions.
Mhm.
A lot of folks, sad to say, have experienced failure in the Philadelphia public school system
Yes. Yes.
and are full of anxiety and
Yes.
fear that what happened to them and their mother is going to happen to their child.
Yes.
And so I get the defensiveness. I get coming in here combative and ready to protect. We get a lot of
Yes.
mama bears,
Yes.
lots of mama bears.
Yes.
And so, something that I kind of started to realize years ago, back when I was doing family therapy, is that
Mhm.
everyone is doing their best.
Yes.
Everyone is sending their pride and joy and everything that they could invest in to school every
Mhm.
day, right?
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
might, they themselves might not be able to read. They might not be able to function on this level. Heck, they might not even have a job.
Right.
They are getting up and they're sending their kid to school every
Mhm.
day, hoping that this system
Yes.
will prove to be better for them.
Yes.
So I approach parents with that in my heart. And I
Okay.
think for most families, they get that sense
Yes.
because I am in this weird limbo position where I'm not the child's teacher. I'm
Right.
not the school administrator. I have
Yes.
no academic expectations for the child. I'm not
Right.
too concerned about, oh, they didn't do problems 10 through 15.
Yes.
I'm meeting them on a different level and
Mhm.
understanding where they're coming from and
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
able to hear them.
Right.
Uh, but also, I have to give parents like a little cool off time, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot
Mhm.
of times, parents want to come in at the end of the day about something
Mhm.
that happened at lunch,
Yeah.
and I try my best to be visible and be able
Mhm.
to watch lunches. But I don't see everything. That's impossible.
Right.
So my line would be, let me do some investigating before
Mhm.
I speak to you about
Mhm.
this. Let me just
Sure.
write your concerns down and let me do a little investigation.
Mhm.
By the 24 to 72 hours, by the time the investigation is done, that has allowed cooler heads to prevail.
Mhm.
And so parents are thinking a little bit more rationally,
Yes.
heard more details from their own child about
Mhm.
maybe what their involvement was, what they did to contribute to the
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so things are a little bit milder.
Yes.
Um, Talking to anybody at 3:30 on a Wednesday after
Mhm.
maybe a lunch altercation, you're going to get some spice. And
Right.
so counter that, giving them a
Mhm.
little wait time
Mhm.
is very helpful.
They need to cut. They need to divide you into 5 different people and send you and send you around, because I'm telling you, you have something about you that you can't learn, and I'm sure you picked it up from your mother, who's an expert teacher, especially on behavior modification. So you've seen your mom in action. So some of the stuff that you're talking about, I know you didn't get from the University of Pennsylvania, even though it's a wonderful school, or from sophomore, you have some internal stuff that mom just passed down to you. And that is such a blessing because as I hear it, I see it. You know what I mean? So that's kudos to you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And there, Eric, as you were talking, it's funny because when I was at Temple and I was getting my master's in ed administration, and so one of my teachers happened to be Dr. Michael Marquez, and he used to be superintendent of schools long ago. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, because someone asked the question, why is it that every single person thinks that they can be a teacher and tell teachers what to do and know all about education? And he says, think about it for a minute. Every single person in the United States has been exposed to school. There's not a person alive that hasn't had access to free education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether you go from K to 12, K to 8, whatever, you've been in a school, you've been taught by a teacher, and you understand how the process goes. So as opposed to other professions, you just can't walk into a doctor's office because you don't know what doctors do. Can't walk into a lawyer's office because you don't know, but you definitely can walk into a school because you've experienced the school, a teacher, and all of that, which is why they come with their opinions. Just like you said, they had their background, and their background may have been full of trauma. It may have been a horrible experience. Teachers may not have liked them, and they bring all that baggage to the building, and then they put that on their children, and it may not even be a reality. So for a counselor, you got to shift through all of that crap to see what's really going on. So your job is one of discernment too, though, right? Which you don't learn. How do you build those tools? Because see, a lot of the things that you see in front of you may not be what it is. Because I'm sure you can sit back and say, once they start talking and you look at the whole situation, you can discern what's going on, right?
Yeah, I usually, and this happens pretty frequently,
Yes.
is that it is not a challenge happening today.
Yes.
This is projection of something that happened 30 years ago.
Yes.
And I think a lot of folks are hyper vigilant about bullying in particular, because they had an experience where they were bullied. And so they are on the watch for that.
Yes.
Oh, this happened, then it must be bullying. And now here I come in as mama bear to protect.
Right.
But while those characteristics of being the protective, defending parent are really good, we really have to be conscious of or cautious of how we or who we put that on to, right? Like, is it the school team? The school team is, typically, and at least in my experience, we are here to support you and help you and your child navigate this. And while, yes, everybody has 12 years, 13 years of academic experience in public schools, very few people have ever taken advanced education courses in an undergraduate setting. And frankly enough, the curriculum and the curriculum design is completely different than it was even a decade ago.
Right.
New math programs, new literacy programs are using like the newest best practices and, like reading development and math understanding. So parents, even though they have a firm concept of what the educational system is and what it's supposed to look, what they think it's supposed to look like, it is completely different these days.
Okay.
I know a lot of parents are concerned about lack of homework or the reduction of homework, but research and the way these new curriculums are written are expressly saying that we don't want homework done.
Right.
And so, systems are changing and families have to be flexible. And, I really want them to be able to understand that. But you have to really be able to discern, is it something that is happening with this child or are we getting some blowback from other things that are happening in this family's life? Sometimes you even see like relational issues playing out academically.
Wow.
We have shared custody, and what does that look like, and what are the grades like when he's with you versus when you're with me, and all of those things. So
that's important. So and I was going to also ask you, I found this is my sister and I, we worked together at the same school, maybe for two different schools. And so I was the assistant principal, she was the dean of students, right? And every single time, there, I wish I could have documented this. I keep saying, there, Eric, I wish I could have documented it. Every time we would have a behavior issue in our office, in my office, I'd bring her in and we talk to the student. And many times, not all of the time, but many times, the behavior stemmed from the child's lack of obeying authority from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always say, what's your relationship like with your mother or your
Mm-hmm.
father or whoever's taking care of you? They didn't feel it necessary to follow mom's direction or dad's direction. And so we would go back to, and I believe this with all of my heart, to honor your parent. Now we know that there are situations where there's abuse going on, but I'm saying typically, if kids have to understand, and this is just my personal opinion, when it says honor your father and mother and your days shall be long, I don't think people get that. And that plays into this situation now with our schools and our children. If you research back to why a lot of kids are having a lot of problems, many of them, is those who make conscious decisions to deliberately defy mom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mom might say, I need you in this house by 7 o'clock. I'm not coming at 7 o'clock. I'm coming at 9 because my friend. And so what you're doing is you're now putting yourself in danger. But see, people don't want to discuss that. And I have seen so much evidence of it. And people will debate this all day long, but it starts there. When children have to understand, when you start defying the authority of home, then that shows up in school. It shows up. So,
but there has to be authority at home. I think you're hitting the nail on the head.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of students are missing that authority.
Yes.
Parents could make a blank statement of being here at that time.
Yes.
But the students, and these kids know there's nothing behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So what if I show up?
Yeah.
You're not going to even be home at that time.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
You're probably out. I had a student tell me a couple of weeks ago. She lied. Mom came in. I'm taking his Xbox. He doesn't know how to act.
Mm-hmm.
Looks at me, says under his breath, she lying. She ain't gonna do that. She ain't gonna do that. They know it's an empty threat.
Okay.
Or parents are out here still living the lies as if they needed to be parented.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might work when they're in kindergarten and fifth grade.
Okay.
But let me tell you this: by the time your child's in fourth and fifth grade, they can see hypocrisy.
Okay.
They can see. They know right and wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and so. I had basically like a dare. It's not dare anymore, but coming in and they're doing, drug awareness, smoke weed, and you listen to the sub conversations in the classroom, and where the kids talking about, oh yeah, my people, my mom, my dad, they smoke, and so to each their own. Everybody's an adult, but if you want to have the respect of your children, you have to be consistent. You have to say what you mean.
Right.
Yep. And you have to call them out. Because for all the parents who want to come up and yell and argue, right? The children are oftentimes using that to split the adults. Because without parental cooperation and parental involvement, we as educators can't do our job. As parents, you really can't do much without the school. So we really need to have a true partnership, just like a mother and father. Mother and father are not aligned, and the child can drive a wedge between mom and dad.
Oh, they will.
The caregiver hierarchy will fail. The children will, and the hierarchy will fail. And so that's also true of the parent-school relationship, that we have to be in partnership together. We have to have similar expectations, right? You can't, as a parent, say, it's okay for you to vape at home. And then the school's policy is we don't vape, and if you vape, you're suspended, right? There's some incongruence in those messages being sent to the child. So we really have to have like the same expectations and hold them accountable when it's time.
But I remember, and I wasn't the counselor. Like I said, the counselor was next door to me, but I always had parents to come in with issues because I stayed late like you. And there was this one situation where I was watching, like, I was talking about discerning the situation. I was watching the dynamics, and there was this one little girl who was in the 6th grade, and she always had problems with the girls because she was like the girl, the it girl. And so she was having problems with another group of girls, whatever. So the mother comes in hollering, screaming, fussing at me because, again, you guys don't do anything. You left my child. And so I'm watching the whole situation. And the young lady was a dictator, the 6th grader, was telling mom what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they got into a little spat in front of me. And she started cursing her mother in front of me, Eric. And I had to stop. I said, whoa. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We can't continue this conversation because you're disrespecting your mother, and I just can't have that. Now, I'm sure I didn't follow the counseling protocol, but I started quoting scripture. And you're not supposed to do that, but look, this after hours, and you're on my time. So, I told about this story that I learned when I was little, and I told all the kids about the story when we were little, how there was this boy in my neighborhood who mother was an alcoholic. I mean, alcoholic. Every time you'd see her, morning, noon, and night, she was always drinking. And so this one particular day, everybody's outside, and we lived across the street from a bar, and everybody was like outside the men at the bar, people jumping rope, just imagine, So the boy's walking down the street with a fishing rod to go fishing, because we lived across the street from Fairmount Park, and there was a big, pond where you go fishing. So the mother runs down the street and says to him, "You can't go fishing right now." Now she's drunk, but she's still his mom. Mm-hmm. And she said he'd start cursing his mother and beat her in front of everybody with this fishing rod. But and I guess his reason was, well, you're drunk, you're my mother, I hate you, and he beats her. So the men, pull him off of her, and then she goes back home still, crying, everything. And he proceeded to go fishing. And I remember my mother saying, he's going to die. And I'm like, we were like, Mom, like, are you being so dramatic? But we were little. We wouldn't say that to my mother. We were like, how do you know? You're not God. My mother said it plain and simple. He's going to die. And I'm like, And my hand to God, it wasn't even a month later. He died. And that stuck in my head for now, even to this day. And my mother, that's why I got that thing about honoring your parent and authority. And so she was saying, it doesn't matter if she's a drunk. That's still his mother, and he is expected to do X, Y, and Z, but it didn't make sense because as a kid, you're a drunk. Why do I got to respect you? And my mother was saying, but that's what kids have to learn. And that's when they don't learn that is when they bring all kinds of discord on themselves. And so what I was saying was I see evidence of that when I see children. I just always bring that full circle. And what happened was this boy, Nabita's mother, was a good swimmer. We all went to the pool to swim. And this one particular day, he went to the pool. He dived off the top of the diving board, and he came down and dived into 17 feet, but his head hit the side of the pool, and he bled out. And I remember being like in elementary school and never forgetting that. And so I took that with me everywhere I go, and I can kind of see it when I see children who don't honor their parent. It doesn't matter what they are. Even if your mother's drunk and she said, come in at 7, come in at 7. It'll just make your life better. And kids don't kind of get that. So they sort of rebel because my mother did this and my mother did, but there's another end to that story. So anyway, I was able to tell this young lady who was cursing her mother out. And I don't know if I did the right counseling thing. I know I didn't, because I was talking about the Bible. You're not supposed to talk about the Bible in school. But I shared that story with that little girl. And she was cursing her mother in front of me. And I said, Mama, you can't allow this. So anyway, the mother started crying. The little girl had a serious attitude with me. And I didn't care, but I told her the story. I said, and if you don't change, it's not that you're going to die. Die doesn't mean like immediate death. Death means the things in your life are not going to be what you expect them to be, sweetheart. It's not going to turn out good for you. Well, they left my office. I never heard from her again. That was my last year at that school. Would you believe that she was in the 6th grade? And when she graduated from high school, one of the teachers called me because she said, I need to let Miss Golden know that I learned my lesson from that story I told her. She turned her life around. Her mother had since passed. Her mother passed. She said, but before her mother passed, she made good on her mom. She said she was respecting her. She did everything that I had suggested on her own. And she graduated with honors, was on her way to college. So I guess that was one of my counseling moments that I was proud of, Eric, because I think a lot of this stuff that you go through, and I know you see it, but you can't speak on it because church and state. There's a conflict.
Hmm.
You know when you see it. You know what I mean? So I thank you. And maybe that's one of the cons of a counselor in a public school. That's my next question. What are one of the I know the benefits. Tell us the benefits. That's how I'm gonna end. Tell us the benefits of being a school counselor that you enjoy the most, and what would be some of the things that you really say, I wish I could change just for yourself.
Okay. So I think the greatest benefit, like you read in my bio, I started
Mhm.
my career off in community mental health. And in community mental health, especially in the programs that I work for, I was working with families where their children were pretty much on the verge of being removed from their homes,
Mhm.
to either go to state institutions or being put in mental health facilities.
Mhm.
And so usually the program was a last ditch effort to create an environment in the home where the child could stay and be successful.
Mhm.
And I did that work for many years. However, and I did see success with that
Mhm.
program. However, it was very draining because every child that walked through those doors or that I connected with was on the verge.
Mm.
Versus as a school counselor,
Mhm.
you get to interact with everyone.
Right.
And so I have my students who need me, but I have
Mhm.
students who don't.
Right.
And
Wow.
this is the best time of year because you get to know them all.
Mhm.
No matter what,
Mhm.
there is this thing called move up day or graduation, depending on where you are,
Mhm.
where you get to see the culmination of the hard work as a counselor, as teachers,
Mhm.
parents, the
Mhm.
community. There is this one snapshot where you can
Mhm.
say, "We did it, y'all."
Okay. Okay.
And I'm looking at like the class I have right now, my current group of fifth graders. I've known many of them since they were in preschool, so since they
Okay.
were 3.
Mhm.
So we're going on 9 years of knowing
Wow.
a, a long time. I'm like, man, I didn't know I'd be doing this for
Mhm.
that long. But you know, getting to see them like seeing the full arc of it. Uh,
Mhm.
and I have students who I had my first year here many
Mhm.
moons ago who are
Mhm.
now in 10th and 11th grade. And
Okay.
then they come up and they're like, Mr. Brown. And I'm confused because the last time I saw them, they were 11 and baby faced and still had that baby fat clinging to
Mhm. Mhm.
them. Now they are grown men or and young
Mhm.
men and women with
Mhm.
facial hair and who
Mhm.
have just matured.
Right.
And so like that is the biggest pro of this is
Wow.
like knowing that the
Mhm.
work is making a difference and
Right.
knowing that they see it.
Mhm.
I have no idea who my school counselors were. I did start my academic career in private school and Christian schools, so I don't know if there were necessarily school counselors there. But once I got to Philadelphia public schools, I don't have any real
Mhm.
memory of a school counselor engaging me, asking me
Mhm.
about my day. Now, in
Mhm.
high school, there's definitely the college and career portion
Very
of it.
right. Right.
There, and I don't even know if they knew me enough to even fill out those recommendation letters that they were supposed to fill out as a school counselor, honestly.
Wow.
Um, but I know that my students who've had me, I get
Amazing.
emails. I get
Yeah.
emails with uh, 5-page college essays attached saying, "Can you help me? I remember you said if I ever needed somebody to edit something, you would do
Okay.
it." And I do it. And
Mhm.
seeing the families, these are
Mhm.
all the things that get me. Seeing
Mhm.
the families, siblings come through, and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
some of my colleagues, seeing
Mhm.
mothers and children come through and fathers and children
Mhm.
come through.
Right.
So it's just like that community aspect of
Right.
being there year after year,
Mhm.
them
Mhm.
knowing where you are.
Right.
Um, so
Wow.
those are the pros.
Yes.
No, the cons are, I think the cons are the same cons that come with being a teacher.
Yes.
I think there is oftentimes a lack of respect.
Mm.
I think when we were speaking about like everybody's been through 12 years of
Yeah.
education, so they think they're an expert in it.
Right.
You are not an expert in this.
Right. That's right.
In fact, I got a couple of $100,000 saying that there is a lot more than just
Mhm.
going to school. that
Mhm.
lends to expertise. There's a lot of knowledge and
Mhm.
a lot of different pedagogy and things
Mhm.
that folks don't understand that goes into academia. Um,
Right.
and so I wish people understood that.
Right.
Um, and I think, you know, systems at large,
Mhm.
all systems have issues of either mismanagement or
Mhm.
not being able to, I guess, being systems not being agile enough to
Mhm.
meet the needs of the communities they're meant to serve.
Right. Right.
And so I think in academics and in education, things can get a little stagnant.
Mhm.
And I do believe for us as a city and a
Mhm.
society to be able to overcome the challenges, and there are a lot of challenges,
Mhm.
but when I'm thinking about the challenges, I'm thinking about us having people,
Mhm.
young men and
Mhm.
older men who look like me,
Right.
being able to survive.
Right.
We have to make some changes.
Yes.
And so there are a lot of people in the district and beyond who are doing some really good work about social emotional learning and how
Mhm.
to get that information and get those skills to not only students but their caregivers. So
Mhm.
we're going to have a more wholesome and a holistic approach. Uh,
Right.
but that is slow work.
Right.
And sadly, we are dying out here in the streets of Philadelphia every single
Every
day.
day. Every day.
So we have to think big. We have to think radically.
Mhm.
I don't have any answers. Again, if I had those answers, I
Right.
would be sitting
Be
here
making a lot more money, right?
with more money. But we do have to think creatively on how do we get these skills
Mhm.
into children, into
Mhm.
students, and how do they then use that information to be successful in life?
Mhm.
Because believe me, in some areas, right?
Mhm.
They don't have the same issues.
Yes.
Right? They can come to school and focus on academics, and
Yes.
as long as they're getting A's and B's in reading and math and science, they are going to be set up for future success.
Right.
Our kids need something more.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were talking a lot about church and religion.
Yes.
Um, a lot of people don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Are missing our third space. People go to work and home, and
That's
that's it.
it. That's
There
it.
is no church group or
Right.
mosque group.
Right.
We're missing that third space of community.
Community. Okay.
So a lot of our young people are feeling lost
Yeah.
and abandoned and
Yeah.
not seen,
Mhm.
particularly young men,
Yeah.
black, white, brown,
Right.
feel like society, especially in
Mhm.
Philadelphia, where you see hundreds of $800,000, $1 million houses going up around you, and the reality of your reality and your family's reality remains unchanged. There are a lot
Mhm.
of young people who are angry
Right.
about, and they don't even know that's what they're angry about.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
They're,
Right.
they see themselves being left behind.
Right.
We as a city have to figure out, how do we make sure that we don't leave these people behind? How
Right.
do we make sure they have the academics,
Mhm.
but also the opportunity?
Yeah.
Where are the opportunities for these 18 to 25, 18 to 30-year-old men? Because the girls are going to college, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Shows that the young ladies are going to college.
Mhm.
Black women, some of the most educated population in the United States, right?
Yes. Yes.
We have found out that this is working for them, but young men are being
Mhm.
left behind,
Yeah.
and that unchecked
Mhm.
is only going to make our situation worse. So we
Right.
have to really figure out, how do we support our young men? How do we give them opportunity?
Mhm.
After they have those opportunities, like, how do we encourage them to
Mhm.
build the families that we know that we
Right.
see are going to be successful,
Mhm.
stable, and ready to bring up the next generation?
Okay. Boy, you said a mouthful, and that I think one, we could use you and divide you into four people, and that would be one of the answers. Because I think, do you do any trainings for like organizations for like within your school for parents for men? Do you, because there's a need. I'm sure that you do some.
I do a little bit of work. Some of my work is like really around like some of the school related issues. So
Okay.
about attendance and truancy,
Okay.
about how to support your student here
Yeah.
at school.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm really thinking about like, what about this? And I work in an elementary school, if I didn't say
Okay.
that earlier. It's like that middle school, high school jump,
Okay.
right? Because there's a lot happening there that, you get that puberty.
Yes.
Everyone loses their minds in that
Yes.
puberty stage. I know you and my mom did the Lord's work working in middle schools,
Yeah.
like some of the most tumultuous times. But something there where they are when they're finding their own identity, they're
Okay.
self-actualizing,
Okay.
but they still need the skills
Yes.
to get them over the hump.
Mhm.
And they don't know,
Mhm.
right? They
Mhm.
don't know what they don't know.
Right.
They don't have the exposure.
Mhm.
Even with my students who have very diverse backgrounds and
Yes.
have professional parents, many of them.
Mhm.
What do I hear? What do they want to be when they grow up? They want to be YouTubers. They want to be TikTokers.
Okay.
But what do you want to YouTube and TikTok about?
Mhm.
You can't just be a cute face. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you can just be a cute face standing on the internet,
Right.
but you need to have a skill, whether it's playing the video game well
Mhm.
or how to tell somebody how to cook. You have to have something that you're going to these platforms to disseminate information about.
Right. Right.
And so I think helping them think more critically about that and
Mhm.
giving them greater exposure
Mhm.
early on about
Mhm.
what are the opportunities out there.
Mhm.
Because the reality is we are well into the 21st century.
Right.
And a lot of the jobs that I know and that us as educators are trying to tell them about are jobs that are maybe seen their peak,
Yes.
and there are new crop of jobs
Yes.
and AI and then robotics that haven't even been invented yet.
Mhm.
So how do we prepare these young people for things that we don't know about? How do we give them skills for things that don't exist?
Right.
So there are all these ideas out there about soft skills and teaching
Yeah.
people to be able to work collaboratively
Mhm.
and talk to each other and understand diversity at an
Mhm.
early age, because these teams are going to be diverse. But I think that's kind of where we have to hammer things out as students get into the middle and high school
Mhm.
years of exposure,
Mhm.
coupled with like really honing down on these soft skills,
Mhm.
working as teams, understanding differences, and
Mhm.
don't let differences be weaknesses, and
Yes.
using things as a strength.
You are so wonderful. I wish I could talk forever and ever and ever. And I know that you got to go back to work. And I thank you, Eric. This has been a wonderful. And guess what? We haven't had any interference from technology. Thank God. So thank you for all of your information. I know that parents always tell them when they listen to take a book, a notebook, and write down what you've learned. And also by this being, it can be recorded over and over and over. You can just press that button and play it over and over if they've missed something. So thank you so much. And I do want to clarify something. I don't want parents writing me letters and saying, well, you talk about honor and authority. If my parent was a drug addict, I'm not saying an abusive household, because kids got to get out of an abusive home. They have to get away from those kind of situations. I'm just talking about on a normal situation where mom, let's say a single mom, is doing the best she can. And then you decide you're not going to listen because you just don't want to. Those are the kind of situations that you can kind of control. That's all I'm saying. When you defy that mom that's just trying her best, and you have it all the time. Mom working 2 and 3, 4 jobs. All I ask you to do is do A, B, and C, and you can't do it. And that just brings more confusion. I'm not talking about abuse, and that terrible neglect. I'm not talking about that population, because that's a different scenario. But for the most part, those who just deliberately defy their parent, they'll bring that same behavior to school. That's what I was referring to. But again, thank you. And we do have a workshop coming up for 18-year-olds who might want to go into real estate. Because everybody, like you said, is not going to college, especially a lot of our brothers. They're not going to college and they're not interested in vocational school. They might be interested in selling houses. And so we're having a workshop on June 8th via Zoom. And I can send you the information. And we have a person who's a real estate agent, because in Pennsylvania, did you know that you can be a real estate agent at the age of 18?
I did not know that.
Yes, you could be a real estate agent and sell property and get a license at 18. So that's something that maybe an 18-year-old who's graduating from high school saying, I don't know what I want to do. That might be something that they'd like to do. So I'll send you that information.
That is a great opportunity. And a very lucrative one, I think.
Yes, I'll send you the link. So thank you again. You were wonderful, folks. This is a wonderful young man. Let's give him a hand right now. Yay! Give him his flowers because he's doing a great job at this school. Thank you. And for those who have not subscribed, please make sure you click that subscribe button and subscribe to Learn with Miss Nancy. Until next time. Thank you. Thank you so much, Eric, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.